My parents refused to help me with my medical expenses, but 6 years later, they need me because my brother left his kids with them and never returned. Their response was not what they expected. At 31, I haven't been in touch with my parents for nearly 6 years after being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I asked them to help with the cost of my medications because my insurance didn't cover everything, but they refused. At that time, I was between jobs and had little money, and everyone knows how expensive medications can be. But as always, my parents disappointed me. We had a pretty ugly fight when they refused, and I told them it was somewhat foolish of me to expect anything from them in the first place, since they never bothered to care about me. They never tried to apologize after that, so we stopped talking. Even at family gatherings, we wouldn't speak to each other. They were on good terms with my brother, even though he was always a total mess, which is not surprising because he was always their favorite. My older brother Carson, 39, is a functional alcoholic and has been so for the last 8 years. He has tried to quit drinking several times, but has never really been able to stay sober. I truly feel sorry for him because a few months ago, he lost his wife in an accident and was left with 2 kids to care for, both under the age of 10. I knew his wife. She was a wonderful, sweet person, and I believe she was the only thing keeping him from becoming a hardened alcoholic who couldn't do anything but drink every day. The grief only made things worse, and shortly after his wife's death, he was fired from his job because he didn't bother to show up or explain his absences. Every day he would leave his kids at his wife's parents' house or our parents' house, and then spend the rest of the day drinking at home. He only got sober enough to drive and pick up his kids, take them home, and put them to bed. The next day, he would repeat the same routine. About a week ago, he left his kids at our parents' house and said he would come back to pick them up at the end of the day as usual. But a couple of hours later, he simply sent an email saying he was not going to return because he knew he wasn't a good father to his children and didn't want them to grow up with him. So he left them with my parents because he knew they could take better care of them and wished them luck. After that, he blocked our parents and his wife's parents so they couldn't communicate with him, and no one had any idea where he was. After a couple of days of trying to find out his whereabouts, they gave up, and my parents decided to contact me and tell me all this to ask for financial help. My parents are already retired and have retirement funds for themselves, but if they start taking care of the kids, they will need more money, and they are not sure they can support themselves and the kids just with the money they have. Carson's in-laws have already given up and said they cannot take on this responsibility. So I'm the only person they can rely on because I am family, and they counted on me. Now, I really haven't been in contact with them in recent years. We weren't on bad terms, but we were never very close. I guess it could be because of the age difference, but we were never very brotherly to each other. I liked my nephews, but it seemed unfair to me that they asked me for help, especially when they have the resources and means to raise the kids on their own. My parents were quite well off when they worked, so it was hard for me to believe they couldn't raise 2 children without my financial help. And I told them that. Despite wanting the children to have a bright future, I couldn't set aside my own and prioritize them, so I said I wouldn't help them with the money. Instead of respecting that, my parents started arguing with me. They said that as a family member, I should realize we're in this together and that I need to help them. I found it quite laughable because I still remember what they told me when I asked for help with my medical expenses 6 years ago. I repeated their exact words to them. Don't count on us. Just because we're family, you need to handle some things on your own. That's what they told me when I said I needed help for a few months with the cost of my medication, which was necessary and expensive, but I would handle everything else on my own. It wasn't even a lot of money. Eventually, I managed on my own after making many cutbacks, which I wouldn't have had to do if they had just helped me. But what they were asking for now was a lot of money every year, and I also had to think about my future. In fact, I plan to have my own children in 1 or 2 years, as my wife of 30 years, and I have been married for 2 years. So it's not practical for me to commit to helping them, and I made that very clear. Moreover, we haven't been in contact in the last 6 years. What did they expect? They got very angry when I repeated their own words. They said I was being foolish and couldn't believe I was turning my back on them just over something that happened 6 years ago. Then they started to emotionally manipulate me, asking if I would say the same if I were in their place. I told them that if I were in their place, I would have called Child Protective Services and let them take over because this was too much for me. Then I hung up. However, my parents told everyone about the Child Protective Services comment I made and how I refused to help. Now the rest of the family is sending me messages, telling me I'm being very heartless. At the moment, I don't know what to do. I guess I wasn't entirely clear about how my relationship with my brother and his family was. First of all, I knew his wife before they got married because we went to the same university together. It was a happy little coincidence. Secondly, I never tried to cut off contact with my brother, but I guess it just happened because after cutting my parents out of my life, even he stopped talking to me. He congratulated me on my wedding a few years ago, but that was all. So, I guess he also started distancing himself from me after my disagreement with my parents, and I guess I resented him a bit for that. Yes, although I haven't kept in contact with my parents, I never actually blocked them. I don't have a reason to do so. I guess I just forgot or never considered it necessary, because the last time we fought 6 years ago, I believed they would eventually reach out to apologize or at least try to talk to me. That's why I left that door open, but when they didn't, I decided to just forget about it. So, I never blocked them. Most importantly, I told my parents to report the situation to Child Protective Services, not because I don't care about my nephew's welfare, but because I don't believe having an alcoholic as a father was helping them in any way. If my parents were really struggling to deal with them, what other option did they have? Anyway, I didn't want it to sound like I was heartless, so that might have been misunderstood and taken out of context, but I just wanted to end that conversation. However, in the end, it's their choice what they want to do. That's all about it, so I hope this gives you more context about my relationship with my family. Update 1. Hello everyone, thank you to those who commented on the original post. I feel much better and more confident in my decision after reading your comments. I finally blocked my parents after 6 years, realizing that nothing good was going to come from that situation. I also blocked all my relatives who sent me messages saying I was wrong in what I was doing, and that I was insensitive and heartless. These are the same people who saw me being mistreated all my life and never stepped forward for me. But now, just because I refuse to help my parents when they need it, I'm the bad guy? Yeah, right. My parents have always been distant and not very affectionate towards me, even when I was younger. I could see how they treated me differently from my brother. They didn't even bother to act differently when we were with the rest of the family, so it was no big secret that my parents had a favorite, and it wasn't me. And no one ever stood up for me. So, I really don't think I have to tolerate any of this. That's why my wife and I decided that we were obviously going to maintain zero contact with my parents, but also completely cut off from my side of the family. We don't need that type of negativity in our life. To be honest, my wife's family is practically my family at this point. So, I don't think we'll be missing much. We celebrate all the important events with her family anyway. So, I don't think this is going to make a big difference to either of us. Life goes on as always. In fact, I feel like I've lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. Even in the past, my family occasionally hinted that my parents were aging and feeling lonely. They suggested I should probably fix things with them or it would be too late, and I could never explain to them that nothing needed fixing. It was them who needed to come to me, and until they did, I wasn't going to set aside my self-respect and approach them. But now, I don't have to explain that to anyone because no one is going to be bothering me anymore about my parents. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update. Today, my parents visited me. I had blocked them, so they had to come see me in person, or at least that's what they said when they saw me outside in the front yard. It was unfortunate that I was out there in the first place. I thought today would be a good day to prune some hedges, so I was outside in the morning, and then my parents arrived in a taxi. When they got out, I tried to run inside the house, but they had already seen me and told me I needed to wait. For some reason, I decided to wait for them to approach and speak, probably because I didn't want to look like a coward running into the house to avoid interacting with them. Once they were there, I told them I hadn't changed my mind. If they came to talk to me about the kids and the financial help they needed from me, they could leave because it would be a waste of time for both me and them. But they told me they weren't here to talk about the kids or the financial help they needed from me. Apparently, they were here to talk to me about our relationship as parents and son. I found this very confusing because it had been 6 years, and we hadn't properly talked among ourselves, so I didn't think it was necessary to discuss things now. But still, I let them speak because I wanted to see where they were going with this. To my surprise, they actually acknowledged the fact that they had never treated me fairly and had been very cruel to me by not trying to be there for me when I was struggling with money. They said they were truly sorry for how they had treated me, but it was simply because, and they never expected to have a second child, and they told me I was more or less an accident, so to speak. They continued explaining that due to me and my mother's unexpected pregnancy, they had to postpone their plans indefinitely, and eventually they couldn't achieve anything they had set out to do in the first place. Apparently, their long-term plan had been to settle into a more traditional lifestyle, where my father would work, my mother would become a housewife, my father planned to quit his job and start his own business, and my mother would stay at home and take care of my brother. But when my mom got pregnant for the second time, they did the math and realized it would be impossible to maintain this kind of lifestyle with a single income. And if my dad tried to quit his job at that time, it would be even more problematic for our family. New businesses take time to balance out, and he couldn't take that kind of financial risk. Although they weren't happy about it, they decided to have me and postpone their plans. But over time, they began to find more and more excuses not to do what they initially set out to do. They didn't even realize it, but at some point they started to subconsciously resent me for it. That's why they had always acted that way with me. But now they were here to finally give me an explanation about why they were never there for me as a child and why they treated me differently, and also to apologize for that. It was a lot of information to process at once, so I literally had to sit down on the porch steps because it was difficult to process it all at the same time. Considering how I was treated all my life, it didn't surprise me that I was unwanted and unplanned. Moreover, the age difference between my brother and me made it clear. But the fact that they had actually resented me for something that wasn't even my fault was what really broke me. Suspecting something in my relationship with my parents was one thing, but hearing it directly from their mouths, I wasn't prepared for that at all. So, after a few minutes of silence, I told them I wanted them to leave and that I would give them my response to all of this later, because at that moment, I was still struggling to process it all. They were respectful enough to leave after that, after telling me once more that they truly regretted the way they had treated me. After they left, I went back inside the house and told my wife everything my parents had told me. I don't know why, but I broke down in tears after that, and she had to comfort me because I was extremely emotional. I cried for a couple of minutes, and once I recovered, I began to think about what I would tell them. I know I'm not obligated to really respond to them, and I don't have to talk to them if I don't want to, but I feel this is something I really want to address. Frankly speaking, I haven't even thought about whether I want to establish a relationship with them after this or not. Everything is a mess in my head right now, and it will take me some time to really make a decision about what I want to do. Update 3. Today I finally sent this email to my parents. I'll copy it here because I really don't have the energy to elaborate more. This is what I sent. Before I get into what I have to say, I'd like to thank both of you for coming to me and at least trying to clear things up. I truly appreciate the fact that, although a bit late, you still tried to do the right thing. But despite that, as I said, it was a bit late. I can imagine how it must have been to give up on your dreams due to an unexpected pregnancy. I know that must not have been easy. I can understand that you were upset about that, but honestly, that is not a good enough reason to have treated me the way you did. I always felt like a second-class citizen, even in my own home. I cannot explain how horrible it was to know that no matter what I did, my brother would always be treated very differently and better than I ever would be. I started to realize that nothing I did would matter in the end, because my own parents were never going to be impressed with me or even care about what I was doing. I don't think you understand how horrible that felt, and I really can't explain it, because unless someone was in my position, they would have no idea. To think that it took you so long to realize that you made a mistake by treating me this way is very sad. I still feel that I am not important enough for you because that's what has been hammered into my head for years and years, and I can't undo all that damage with just an apology. I need my space, and I need time to process this, and I can't even tell you that I might be ready to reconcile with you after some time. The truth is, I simply do not know. I don't understand why it has taken you so long to realize something so simple and basic. You cannot treat children poorly all their lives and expect them to still be there for you when you're older and need them. So, I am very sorry to say this. I really value the apology and the explanation for your behavior, but I think I am going to maintain my decision to remain without contact with you. Maybe someday I might feel differently, and then I might reach out to you to reconcile and make things right between us. But for now, this is the conclusion I have come to, and I really hope you respect this and do not contact me again, not until I am ready. So update 4. Today is almost midnight, and it's been 6 days since my last update when I sent that email to my parents. After that, they hadn't contacted me, and I thought they would respect my decision to maintain no contact until I was ready to talk and possibly mend our relationship. However, this afternoon, my wife and I concluded that it was unrealistic to expect that they would truly respect what I told them. We had just gotten home from work and were refreshing ourselves when they showed up at our door, looking very upset. So I opened the door and told them I was not ready to talk to them yet, and I thought I had made that clear in the email. But my dad said they had read the email several times over the past few days and thought I was exaggerating and that it really wasn't that serious, and by now I should have accepted this. They said they had apologized, hoping that maybe it would soften me towards them and that I would try to understand their struggles as well. But instead, it seemed like I only cared about myself and how I felt. My mom accused me of not even caring about all the sacrifices they had made since my dad had spent his whole life working for someone else, when what he really wanted to do when he was younger was to build something of his own, but let that opportunity pass because of me. She also had made many sacrifices for me and my brother, and while at least Carson had an excuse since he had just lost his wife and thus couldn't be there for his family, I didn't even have that kind of excuse. They claimed I was selfish for not taking into account all that they had given up for me, and that I kept acting as if I were the only victim in the situation without thinking about what they were going through. Then my dad said the email had been ridiculous, and they had thought about it for a while but could no longer respect this stupid decision of mine any longer. They were here to fix things with me once and for all. It was a really strange approach to take, to be honest, because if they were willing to decide they really wanted to fix things with me as they said, they should have taken a different tone with me. But they were getting really aggressive, and I didn't like that. Plus, I had just gotten home from work, so I was very tired and in a bad mood. So I stood against them and told them that they were the ones being idiots. If they really thought that a half-hearted apology was going to make up for everything they had put me through my entire life, they were wrong. I told them I owed them absolutely nothing, because they had never treated me with any kind of respect. I also reminded them that I had been very polite with them in my email, and even told them that if they respected my decision to not talk to them for the moment, maybe it would have been a little easier for me to reconcile with them in the future after I had processed this at my own pace, and they had no right to dictate whether my reaction to something is an exaggeration or not. So if I think I don't want to talk to them right now, I won't, and they can't force me. My dad tried to interrupt me, but I simply yelled and shut him up, telling them both that I would call the police if they didn't leave. After cursing me for a while, they finally left, and I went back inside to tell my wife about the conversation we had just had. I was furious and ranting to her. After I finished, she told me that I should have seen this coming. She explained that when My parents came here to apologize to me in the first place. She felt that they might be doing this because they had realized that now, since Carson had left, they only had me to rely on in their old age, and were just trying to manipulate me emotionally so that I would forgive them and they could take advantage of me since they are both retired now. And when I decided not to forgive them so easily, they got angry, and that's why they came here looking for a fight with me, and maybe somehow make me forgive them by bringing up how much they had sacrificed for me. I agree. I had thought something like this but didn't want to accuse them directly of anything because I still wanted to give them a chance in case that apology was genuine. However, after this recent fight, I know for sure it wasn't, and the only reason my parents were trying to make peace with me was that they knew they could no longer count on Carson and needed me on their side. My wife and I agree that we really dodged a bullet by deciding not to forgive them and maintain contact with them even after their apology. We could see right through them, and that's what led to the confrontation today. I'm glad they showed their true colors and didn't fool us. Update 5. It's been a long time since I checked Reddit, but I logged in a few days ago and realized that I had received many comments on my old posts and updates. It has been almost 6 months since the last update, so I think this update is necessary. Of course, most want to know how things have been with my parents, and I'm happy to report that we still have no contact with them, and it will likely remain that way for a long time in the future. After that last fight we had, my parents sent their lawyer to tell me they were removing me from their will and leaving everything to Carson and his kids. I told the lawyer that if they wanted to hurt me, they would have to try much harder. Since then, we haven't had any more interactions because I guess they forgot that I no longer cared. I'm very happy not to talk to them because, from what I hear, they become more unbearable every day, still speaking ill of me on their social media, and my relatives laugh. But it's okay because I know I'm improving in life. As for Carson, I heard from a cousin that he made a reappearance and took his kids to move to his new job in Los Angeles. He had been completely gone for 2 months, and then, out of the blue, he showed up at our parents' house to apologize to them for everything they went through and took his kids with him. I'm glad things are getting better for him now. I hope he can take care of his family, and I sincerely wish him the best. He has had enough problems in the past, and although we are not exactly on good terms, I don't think badly of him. A new update is that my diabetes is improving. I started a diet 4 months ago where I eliminated carbohydrates and mostly eat meat, which I love, but it has also improved my life in general, like my mood and other things. Even my doctor is thinking about taking me off my medication because my last checkup went very well. Now, talking about my wife and me, remember that we said we planned to start our own family? Well, we finally did it, and in just 6 months, we are going to have a baby. And we have never been happier. We announced the news a few weeks ago, and Carson congratulated us and wished us luck for the future. My parents decided to post a cryptic message about how grandparents never receive the recognition they deserve the same day to draw attention, which was to be expected. Anyway, my wife and I are excited and look forward to this new chapter. Update 6. 2 weeks ago, we brought our baby Aaron home, and we are the happiest parents in the universe. My wife is very tired, but it's understandable after having that little being inside her for almost 9 months. Many people knew we were having a child, so my parents could have heard about it in many ways. However, what matters is that they showed up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this update. They arrived with a bouquet of flowers and even a teddy bear, and wanted to enter the room where my wife and the baby were to meet him, but I looked at them with surprise when I saw them there. I had gone out to get coffee and was in the hallway when they showed up. I told them there was no way I was going to allow that. They pleaded with me to let them in, showing me the gifts they had bought, but I continued to refuse. They also told me that since Carson moved to Los Angeles, they hadn't had much contact with him and that I was family. I asked them if they had hit their heads and if they had forgotten everything that had happened in the past, but they insisted more and more that we should leave everything behind and take advantage of the baby to start anew. I told them it was better for them to leave because we were in a hospital and it was no place to argue about anything. But when they continued insisting, I told them they could continue talking but with security personnel. so they left. Although they tried to leave me the gifts, which I did not accept, after that, I have not heard from them, and I hope it stays that way. I waited to see if that would happen before making this update, so I would be very annoyed if I have to come back tomorrow to make another one, because they finally showed up. Let's hope things continue this way.